Right now, my Jerusalem is Refinery Church, and within that community we have Central Unified School District.
Yes.
So my heart has been within the Central Unified School District. I always tell myself, if I can't reach my community, what business do I have in somebody else's hood or in somebody else's neighborhood or in somebody else's community? You get what I'm saying? And so my thing is that how can I bring unity within my community, and then before I start bringing unity within all of like Fresno, everything like that.
Welcome back, everybody, to Creative Culture. It's your boy Nemo, where we believe here, creatives like you and I can change the culture we live in today. And the person that I have today is none other than my boy JJ. He is a person that I believe changes the culture that we're living in today. What's up, my boy?
My dude, man, it's a privilege.
I didn't think I was going to be able to say that with one breath, man.
Man, that was a good intro.
We ate a lot of food today.
Yeah. That was a good intro. I'm actually like really like stuffed right now. So, but thank you for having me on. It's a privilege and honor to be on Creative Culture. Finally on Creative Culture. I can't believe it.
I apologize for that. No, man, today I was really excited. We had a conversation last week about, I was like, hey man, I want to get you on, for people that don't know that this is already going to just pre-recorded. So we're actually already living in the Bay Area at the moment that this comes out. But, I wanted to get you on, man, because I believe your story matters, and your story, I believe, is just impactful. And we've had tons of conversations before cameras. Everything is just us sitting down, whether we're eating out or we're just talking on the phone. We've had some great conversations. So today, I believe is going to be, we're just letting them into a phone call, per se.
Let's do it.
And so just for people to know a little bit about your background, because they're probably gonna like, all right, this dude's accent's already, he's not from California. So if you can just share like maybe 2-3 minutes of just who JJ is.
So JJ is from California. No, I'm just playing. I am originally from New York. I grew up, raised in New York, came out to California back in 1999, did my high school years here. And it was rough and tough, man. But yeah, that's who I am. I'm currently married, happily married, with 2 kids, have the privilege and the honor to serve at Refinery Church as the youth pastor. Also just taking on a young adult role right now as well. And just kind of spearheading this next generation, and hoping God can do something within what's going on in our community.
Yeah, I would say you didn't grow up that way. Your dad grew up mainly in the faith, right? But you kind of steered off a little bit.
Yes.
If you can share just briefly about like kind of like almost like the quote unquote hell that you had to go through, in order to receive heaven correctly. So what would you say, like a little bit of your past, like that got you kind of outside of the faith, in that, like to get you to kind of fall away?
What got me away was the traditional rituals within the church. It was the rules, the regulations, the do not do this, do not do that. It was the, hey, you need to look like a Christian. Hey, you're not
I don't know
acting.
That you have to dress.
You have to act a certain way. It was those things that actually caused me to kind of step back from the whole Christian faith. And I wasn't really strong in my faith. I was going to youth, but like I said, because I came from New York, I didn't have a lot of friends. I didn't have any family. And so I gravitated to the church because that's where I was able to get my friendships. And I was able to establish some really good friendships that I've had. And I learned now today that I actually took advantage of those friendships that I had in the past. But church just didn't look like me. It just didn't. And I was a little bit more rebellious. I grew up in a, hey, you know what? You can be Christian and you don't have to be all the way in type of thing. And so that's exactly what I was. I said I was Christian, but I didn't go to church. I lived my life. I was my own God. And so that was something that actually drew me away from the church. And that's why I'm so emphatic now, to actually share Jesus with the kids that I have right now, just in a whole different light, accepting them exactly how they are and not condoning them. This generation nowadays is like they leave you undelivered, they leave you unopened, you know what I mean, everything like that, and I got to go ahead and take that, you know what I mean. I have to show mercy, I have to show grace consistently, and it hurts me a lot of times, but that's the pain that we go through as ministers, to be able to continue to get that next generation, so that way they don't feel convicted of like, hey, JJ kind of said something that made me feel bad or made me feel a certain way.
Yeah.
And so now I can't go over there to church because he's going to tell me something. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So always being welcomed, if I can say that.
I've experienced you outside of the church being, I've been with you to a continuation school?
Yep.
And then a regular high school.
Yep.
And you are literally the same person. I've seen you be the same. I've seen you talk to any and everyone. And I can tell that your past gives you the motivation for today to impact the future of tomorrow.
Absolutely.
And I noticed that, like, you're so real. And I think that's why people relate with you, right? Because, like, the continuation school, like, these kids, this is their second chance in life, in school, and they're most likely not even gonna finish, but you're giving them that hope, that little shed of like, hey, brother, I know you jacked up, my man's, I know you not. Listen, I know you not good.
That's it. So
but
good.
but like, there's always a but in between it, and I believe that God sent you here for the in between, like the but in this youth, because while they're drifting to the left, but JJ's pulling me back to the right, and I can tell, like, that just motivates you and that pushes you. And what would you say, when you go to these schools? What is that one thing that is just like, I gotta be there again next week? Like, I have to be there. Like, I gotta go again next week, and I gotta go again the following week, because, like, what is that one thing that just draws you to it?
I see them in me. I see me in them. And so what happens is that I would have wanted someone to consistently go back and talk. Yeah. Go back. So not giving up on them, right? What makes me draw back to them is the fact that everybody in their lives have given up on them because of the way they treated other people. And I am allowing them to treat me the same way that they've treated everyone else. The only thing different is that I'm going to persist. I'm going to stay persistent in being in their lives. Like, I'm going to come back next week and you're going to hear me talk about God. And it's going to be different than what everybody else has spoken to you about God, because I'm going to present it to where it's relevant to you, to where you could relate to what I'm saying, and then understand that the Bible has like Jesus experienced everything that we're going to experience here on this earth. You know what I mean? And he's our example. You know what I mean? And so that's something that I actually want to be able to portray or just talk to the young people and just be real with them. I just want to be able to talk to them, let them know I'm not going nowhere. You're not going to be able to scare me away. Anything you do is not going to hurt me, because I've already experienced a lot.
This thing right here is killing them every single day, because, well, they're going viral, they're going crazy, and man, I do the same thing as them. Matter of fact, I look better than them. I'm better looking. I'm smarter. I talk nicer or better. And for some reason, they're going viral and I'm not. And so they have this identity issue. And I believe that what you're doing is you're stopping this identity issue. You're stopping the identity crisis by giving them the person that gave you the identity in the beginning with. And I see that a lot. Like, man, dude, when you shared, there was a couple hundred students in the gym. And when you were just sharing a little bit of your life, you could see some of them didn't care. But there was that few that I saw were like, oh, shoot, like, this is touching me. They weren't just there for the pizza. They weren't just there just to be with their boys or their homegirls. Like, they were there because what you said was like, man, because you're probably the only representation of God they have. So you have to live a life aligned to God's will. And of course, we're human. We might fall. We all fall short of the glory every single day. We did something wrong today that we probably could have changed, and that's the good thing of grace, but I just see that, man, and I commend that and I applaud it. I don't want to just I don't bring people here. I don't want to just bring somebody on just because you're doing so great, but no, I've seen it firsthand. You don't just talk it. You rather just walk. You rather show somebody than just talk to them about it. And that's amazing.
That's it, man. Honestly, what I try to do, Nehemiah, is I honestly try to focus on my community, man.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just bringing your community. Like, God has put every single person at a specific church to reach that community, right? Yeah. To reach your Jerusalem, right? The Bible says, Acts 1:8, you know what I mean? That you're going to reach your Jerusalem. Like, when the Spirit descends, you're going to go ahead and go into all the earth, go into Jerusalem, Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. Right now, my Jerusalem is Refinery Church, and within that community we have Central Unified School District. Yes. So my heart has been within the Central Unified School District. I always tell myself, if I can't reach my community, what business do I have in somebody else's hood or in somebody else's neighborhood or in somebody else's community? You get what I'm saying? And so my thing is that how can I bring unity within my community, and then before I start bringing unity within all of Fresno, everything like that, I kind of keep my head down and I go through the plow. You know what I mean?
And you support, bro. Man, dude, it's so hard to find people who genuinely support people. You can't find. It's like you almost have to pay for it, which then becomes fake support, which then becomes forced support. There's no force in your support. There's no you genuinely support because you said, and you've said this before, I want to be able to be an impact to the community. I want to, like you said, I want to impact my community here, man. And if I go support you in your community, that means you might want to do it because, the Bible talks about how God sent in twos. God sent people out in pairs. Yeah. So that, because two is better than one always, and to me it's dude, your support and who you are as a person, it motivates people. And you're just a genuine person. You're just, man, sometimes I get off the phone, my wife is you was on the phone with JJ, huh? Because I'll be ready to go tear a wall down or something, I'll be ready to go throw something. They're like, why are you about to throw a chair? I don't know. I just got off the phone with JJ. I just ready to fight some, if I'm ready to fight some. And it's in a good way. It just, and it's great. And that's because God gave you a second chance. God gave you the second chance in life. You messed up in school, or not, you messed up when, it was high school. You decided to, go left when you should have stayed right. And then even now as a person, you share with me some stuff in your past. And I was like, man, God gave you this second chance at life, second chance in your, everything, being a dad, being a son, being a friend. And if you can, just talk a little bit about the transition of God giving you this second chance, bro. Because people see the now JJ, but they don't know that the old JJ is only the new JJ is only representation of the second chance that God gave him. It's funny. You go to Refinery, God refined you for the last 3 years.
Come on,
Refinery.
Let's go.
To be able to refine the students that you are touching today.
Yes.
So if you can just talk a little bit about that,
bro. My second opportunities, you hitting it on the nose, my man. Like I said, I was going to church, but then I left the church. And when I left the church, I felt like I was really genuinely happy. I felt like, man, my life is now beginning because I was living under my parents' roof. My dad had found his calling when we came out here. So he was kind of always pushing us to church. My dad was in the prison ministries, everything like that. When I left, I really thought I had it all together. I ended up getting with a girl, fell in love, everything like that, ended up getting married, ended up losing a kid through miscarriage. That ended up leading me into a divorce, is having that miscarriage with my first wife, and then getting married again. That's the second opportunity, right? God has given me another opportunity to get it right. And I almost let that second opportunity go as well. And so I found myself in a real big rut. I was in a hole. I was trying to chase the bag. I was looking for love in all the wrong places. I was out there, drinking, smoking, doing things I ain't never done as an adult. Like I felt like I was going through a midlife crisis, bro. And it was just insane, man. And then what happened was I always thank God for like COVID and his mercies.
Same.
Because he has an interesting way on how to grasp our attention. And he got my attention real good. I had ended up leaving my wife, and I submitted divorce documents like 3 times, bro. And these three times it was over there, and while I was living in San Francisco, living a whole different life.
Yeah,
a whole different life. And as I'm living this whole different life, I'm thinking, yeah, I already made it. Like I'm good because I'm living lavish over in San Francisco. COVID hits, man, and it forces me to Fresno. And when I get forced to Fresno, I ended up actually going. The only doors that were actually open were the doors to my parents' house and the doors to the church. And so I ended up going to the church. And when I started going to the church, I started feeling like my heart was already getting softened. Like I was already starting my transformation, right? Like God was getting a hold of me.
1000%.
And then when I was caught in my parents' room, I had a room in my parents' house, and I would look at testimonies over testimonies, and I just cry and weep and say, God, like, what is going on? Like, why am I crying? So I don't even really cry that much. Why am I crying so much? Why do I feel something like heavy on my heart? Everything like that. And man, like these grown men, like how God had just taken their lives from literally hell and bringing them into glory upon glory and glory. And I'm like, man, like, I don't even want glory. I just want you, God. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And it was a definitive moment in my life where I didn't really understand what was happening. I didn't know what was going on in my life. I was actually blaming my dad, and I was telling my dad, why do I feel this way? He was like, yo, talk to Pastor Brad, who's my lead pastor. Shout out to Pastor Brad at Refinery Church. He was like, go to Pastor Brad, because if I tell you what you're going through right now, you're not going to believe me because I'm your dad. And so I went and I spoke to Pastor Brad, and Pastor Brad just smiled. Like he just smiled. He's like, man, like that's awesome. Like
he has that smile too.
Yes. Yeah. And he was just smiling. He was like, man, like this is God actually transforming your life, like touching your life. And I felt like the prodigal son, bro, like how everybody at the church just felt warm and welcoming. Like there was so many people in the Spanish ministry. My dad's a Spanish ministry pastor. So many in the Spanish ministry that were actually praying for my return, everything like that. I just felt like, man, like all these people were actually praying for me. And I would, bro, I had Facebook, I had Instagram, and I would get like requests from people from the church, and I deny, block, because I don't want nobody looking at the way I'm living, and I respected my dad so much. You know what I mean? And so at that point, I was like, you know what? Like, what is going on with me? And I started to just read the Bible, man. And the Bible just started, like, I just felt like the words just jumped.
Yeah.
Bro, like the words just, I'm dead serious. The words just jumped. And I was like, oh, snaps. Like, and it just gave me a peace. Mm-hmm. You know, I told my students this the other day. I found a interview of somebody that was very successful, and the interviewer asked him, like, what do you constitute success? And he said, I have all the money in the world, I have everything that I want, but what I constitute success is having peace. And I felt a peace in my life that has that has no words to it. Like I literally felt like all the stuff that was weighing heavy, my finances, not having a place to stay, losing my family, everything. Everything. It just lifted. And yeah, and after that submission, I was looking for God. And man, my wife was looking for God at the same time. And we never knew that all the process of me actually submitting those 3 divorce documents, it was all God working in the back end saying, I'm not done with your marriage.
Yeah.
Like God was working with my wife at a whole different church than the church that I was going through. And I didn't even know she was going to church.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't know she was going to church. I didn't know what God was doing in her life. Like I just was being obedient to God on my end because I know I needed something else. Bro, it was crazy. And then once I submitted the last divorce documents,
you said it was 3, right?
It was 3 of them, bro. 3 of them. I submitted 3 of them, and after the first one, I was like, I'm getting a lawyer. I'm not messing with this. I'm getting a lawyer. So I got a lawyer, and the lawyer couldn't even get it right after 2 more times. I'm like, bro, like, what am I paying you this money for, bro? Like, I'm trying to finish this chapter of my life. You know what I mean? And it was God throughout the process, man. And then after we submitted it the last time, it came back denied again. And I said, God, like, if it comes back denied, she was praying the same prayer, bro. The same prayer. She was like, if it gets denied again, I know exactly what you want me to do.
I was looking here online. I always like to look at numbers. You can ask my wife. I'm a number guy. And number 3 means divine wholeness. You submitted it 3 times.
Yes.
So what God was doing is he was completing you guys to restore you guys, to
come
bring you guys back together. I like numbers.
So
I'm
good.
sorry. I'm a number guy. I like
That's
looking at
so good
because everything has a representation.
Yeah.
And to me, what you're saying, I'm like, wow, he was literally. It was a divine appointment
to
make you guys whole separately.
Yes.
So you guys can be complete together.
And it was literally a divine appointment because when we met at my dad's office, and I made sure that there was nobody in the church. You know what I mean? Because I probably would have dropped somewhere. I'm just barely like receiving Christ and barely being sensitive to the Spirit, right? So I'm still got some little heathen in me and stuff like that. But man, like God just spoke to both of us. Like we prayed. We cried, and we said, if this is going to work, we have to go to counseling. I felt I was too prideful for counseling because I was a counselor myself. And so we went to counseling, and throughout the whole course of counseling always feels funky at the beginning, right? Like you're writing letters, like love letters to each other, and you're doing this, and you got to say like how you feel and how do you feel today? Oh, do I understand you correctly? Do you? And all this other stuff, right? And I'm like, bruh, like is this gonna work? Like this ain't gonna work. But is the consistency, is the perseverance that we want, right? Like God wants us to be faithful to him and say, hey, even though things ain't gonna work out the way you think is gonna work out, I still got your back and I'm working something better. Like you think you know what you want, but like, bro, be patient because I'm working something better than what you want. You know what I mean? And so that's what it was. It was like, man, like, I don't know if this is going to work, but God, I'm going to trust you anyways. And so in us trusting him at the end of it, bro, it salvaged our marriage. Like my son, there was times where I would come, and this kind of hits me still because there would be times where I'd come into the house, and when I would come to the house and visit my son, I really didn't want to spend time with my wife. I wanted to see my son. And in seeing my son was mourning so much for a dad. And every time I would come, my son would come and take off my shoes. I would sit down on the couch and he would come and just take off my shoes. And I never understood why he would take off my shoes. I'm like, bro, I'm not going to stay here. Like cool. Like I'm just playing with you. I want to watch TV with you, everything like that. And he's like, take off your shoes, papas. Take off your shoes. And I'm like, what? And I would always say okay because I would stay for a little bit. But then there would be times where he would hide my shoes. And I was like, Malachi, where's my shoes? They're like, oh, stay here, papas. You stay here. I'm like, no, papa, I gotta go home. And so when I started to understand what he wanted, I understand his brokenness. See, many people don't know.
Even he was planting seeds.
Yeah. Many people don't know that my son is autistic.
Yeah.
And my son is on the spectrum. And so sometimes I took advantage of the fact that he was on the spectrum, thinking that he doesn't know anything.
Man, they're the smartest kids ever.
Bro, I didn't know how much I affected my son.
Wow.
I didn't know how much I affected my son. I affected my son so much to the point where like he would always like ask like if he could get on the on even to this day, papas, let's get on the train. Let's get on the train. Because he will always get on the train with me to go to San Francisco. That was the way that we would get over there. And if not, I would have my brother take him over there with him on the train as I was over there in Emeryville while I was living in Emeryville.
Waiting for him.
Bro, that broke me, man. That broke me. That killed me. Just seeing my son in that stature, in that manner, bro. And so when I started seeing like how broken my son was, I understood like not only did I break my wife's heart, but I broke my son's heart.
Yeah.
And I didn't think that it was gonna affect him. Those were my selfish ambitions. And so the fact that I'm now allowed, because of God, putting God first in our marriage, loving him above everything. Mm-hmm. I'm able to now reconcile my relationship with my wife, have that second chance that you're talking about in my marriage, have that second chance as a dad in my son, have that second chance, in my stepdaughter's life. My stepdaughter went through this process already with her dad and her mom the first time. And I just kind of broke open those wounds that she had already healed from because I was in her life for so long.
Wow.
And I cracked open those wounds when I had left because it was a resemblance of what she seen her dad do to her mom. And so those things, man, like I didn't know all the people that I was affecting because of my selfish decisions. And man, and that's why I serve God with everything I have. And I just want everyone to understand how much God loves you and will take you back. I always tell everyone, it doesn't matter how many steps farther you went from God. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you took 1,000 steps away from God. He's just one step close to you. And that's all he wants you to do is just take that one step to him. And it's scary, bro. It's scary. It was scary to fall back in love with my wife. I didn't have the love sufficient. I was on insufficient funds in my love, but God was able to deposit the love in me to give to my wife. Yeah. And so now through that love that he deposited in me, I'm able to love my wife. I'm able to love my son. I'm able to love my daughter. I'm able to love my community. I'm able to love the people in my church. I'm able to love my parents. You know what I mean? I'm able to be thankful for where he's putting me at. I don't deserve to be here in this podcast, bro. I don't. I'm just an average person, but I want everyone to understand that God is a God of second chances. That's what he's all about.
That's all he does.
That's all he's about. And so I'm so, what God has allowed me to do within this generation is for me to spread my testimony, to give hope to those kids that looked like me when I was their age. Mm-hmm. That's all. And no one has ever been able to give me the Bible, the gospel, in a way that I was able to understand it.
Yeah.
It was always you better accept Christ or you're going to hell. And I was like, well, then I guess I'm going to hell because God has too many rules. Like I got too many things that I cannot live up to. Yeah. And the crazy thing about it is that I read this the other day, or I heard this the other day. And it was on a podcast, actually. I listened to Southside Rabbi. I don't know if you know.
I've heard of him.
Okay.
I've heard of him, yes.
Yes. So you need to get up on that. But I heard this the other day. It says the only thing we contributed to our salvation was the sin that made it necessary. Bro, when I heard that, I was like, man, that is so true. Because we're all broken. There's nothing that we can do to make God want us more. Yeah. And so I think that a lot of the students nowadays are just looking for, will God accept me the way that I am? Because my church, they're telling me I need to live a different way. And so I have a lot of students in my school. You said it. I spoke to hundreds of students at the school, and thank God for Central Unified School District to open the doors for us to be able to spread the gospel to these students. You know what I mean? All these students, they feel like, hey, I don't want to go to church because it's a religious act, right? And so they don't want to step foot in a church. But when I go and I talk to them and I bring the pizza and everything like that, bro, these kids are stuck. Like, man, like I've never,
It's because you are the church. They don't have to go into a building to experience who's in the building, because who's in the building is who you carry.
Come on, that's it.
So it's like, you're a representation of what the church is.
That's it.
So that's why you don't have to. Yeah, fine. Don't go to my church. Don't go to this building that we call a church, because I'm gonna bring the church to you. Because Jesus doesn't live in a building. Holy Spirit doesn't live in a building. He lives in a place. He lives in a person. He lives in a heart. So wherever you go, you are the church. We make a church.
Come on.
You know? So that's why it's like, cool, man. And then the whole time you were talking about your story is I kept, you returned. Everything was you returned. The key word in return is turn. Sometimes we got to get into the dead end to turn around, to return to where God had us for. Sometimes us, like we grew up in church in a sense. We sometimes have to experience everything else outside of church to be like, man, what was in it was the best. But yeah, it might have not been the way that we wanted it to be, or maybe the way we grew up. I didn't grow up in necessarily, and I grew up in a church that had a massive scandal. So I know what it was like to be like, church, and I'm done. I'm done with it. I'm cool. I'm good. And I was a Christian, but I wasn't a Christian because I didn't have Christ in me. I just knew of Christ. And it wasn't until I took that step out from God, from the church, or from, just from Jesus himself. I took a step away, and that's when he had to reveal himself to me. I had to hit rock bottom, seeing someone pass away in front of me, something that still touches me to this day. I see his face right now, just even thinking about it. But God literally had to, like, almost break me, because he's like, if I break the back of what is trying to, like, you break your back, you ain't moving. So you need someone else to move you. And that's what Jesus does. He's like, all right, cool. You want to go? I'm going to break you just so that way I can pick you up and take you back to where you belong. And it's like, man, dude, like this, your story just, it's just crazy, because a person of that magnitude that went through what you've gone through, growing up in the faith, one marriage, second one ain't working out, I'm out, have a whole nother life, and be like, I'm cool. I don't need to go back. But it's always a cry of a child that brings a father back. What do you think? Why do you think Jesus is still around? Because the cry of his people is what brings him back. And I don't think people understand the cry. God hears your cry even when you don't think it. And while you thought you were good, that little kid inside was hurting. And Jesus had to use a kid, your child. See, because God says I have a childlike faith.
That's it.
Why sometimes I feel like my daughter, who is she talking to? Well, yeah, because she's closer to an angel than I ever will be. Because I've experienced too much. That little girl is just, sometimes I'm like, who is she playing with? I'm talking to my friend, who's a friend. I know exactly who it is. And it's like, he used your child. God used your kid to plant seeds in you, that later on everything else was being watered for you to be here. And now your son never has to worry about. You can keep your shoes off as long as you want now. Because daddy's staying.
Yes.
And to me, true. Like, I would have never known if you never would have told me that that's the life you went through, right? Like, when you told me that, I was like, what? Like, nah. But it was just like, but I felt the realness, and I was just like, wow, that's crazy. And that's why I said, man, like, when we had a conversation, the God of second chances. Because not a lot of people know that it's all right to mess up. Like, there's another chance he's going to give you,
Yeah, and that's honestly my cry for so many, man. I don't only talk to students. But there's so many families in our church that marriages are just being broken, man. And one thing that I've learned is that we don't understand the magnitude that we hold in our household when we do something that breaks the family apart. For example, my mom and my dad, had they split up, I would have grown up thinking it's okay to have a divorce.
To just leave.
And so not only is my generation, like that generational curse, you can say, or whatever, is now continue to establish, because us as parents, we're our kids' role model. So if our kids don't see us, mom and dad, kiss in public, if our kids don't see mom and dad hug, if our kids don't see mom and dad laugh, if our kids don't see the love that we have towards one another, they're going to grow up thinking that it's okay to love in separate rooms. They're going to think that it's okay to love in different homes. They're going to think it's okay to love through arguments and disputes and physical abuse and all this other stuff, because that's what we're showing them, that it's okay to have a relationship like that. And what we do is we deposit that in, and I have 3 other siblings. So not only would it be okay for me to see it's okay for parents to split up in a home, but then my brothers and sisters would think it's okay for their home to also be divided. Exactly. And then it becomes a trickle effect. Imagine a house back in the days, me and you Hispanic. So we have big families, right? Exactly. And so my thing is that if I have a home and my parents, the fact that my parents were able to reconcile their marriage gave me hope to reconcile, to trust in the God that they trusted in, for me to reconcile my relationship with my wife. And say it is possible. I just got to go ahead and trust them. And this is the thing, is my wife's favorite verse, and it's becoming mine so much. It's Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. And it says, do not lean on your own understanding. Trust in him in all you do, and he will direct your path. Bro, it's so hard to trust God.
Yeah, it is.
So hard to trust God, especially when you're getting to know him. And this is where our generation now is fearing, like, how do I know I'm going to be okay? I've been hurt so many times before, and you're having me trust in a God I can't even see. Like, there's so many people in my life that I can see and I can say, hey, this person got a good reputation, and I can go by word of mouth. This person's a good person, everything like that. So I'm going to be able to trust this person because I can see this person, and this person has had a good reputation, and I'm seeing him on Instagram, everything like that. We can't see God. But if we, and one thing that I really, really like is that God will actually blind us physically to open our eyes spiritually. And I feel like that's exactly what he did. I was walking in this world blind and I didn't even know it. And I came to him and he opened up my spiritual eyes.
Yeah.
And now I'm able to see, like, man, there is hope in Jesus. Like, there is an opportunity for me to get this right. There's going to be a lot of people that say, oh, I remember you back in the days. Right now, Snapchat is very prevalent. Bro, back in the days before Christ, I had Snapchat and I literally was everyone's entertainment. When I left Snapchat, everybody was like, Jay, where you at? Like, I ain't seen you, all this. Because I was literally acting a fool on Snapchat. But also Snapchat has a feature where you can text people and erase those text messages. And so that was another way of infidelity that I was doing with my wife.
Boy, you
that's why now I say Snapchat is the devil for me. I will never have Snapchat ever again.
Hey,
I can't. I mean, if you got it, that's more power to you. Everything like that.
Because Snapchat was the devil for me too.
Yes, I can't.
Wow.
I don't trust myself with Snapchat. I didn't even trust myself with any of the social media that I have right now. But now I understand that I represent something more than myself.
Yeah.
Now I understand that not only I didn't even represent the Castillos right? Which is my last name, but now I'm able to represent Jesus Christ. And I understand that that name is above all names.
That's good.
And so I need to go ahead and make sure that my life is especially if I'm helping shepherd our next generation, our schools, everything like that. Like, I need to be that example. Because if I'm not that example, like, it's crazy, bro. Us youth pastors and even pastors, we have so much influence. And sometimes we take advantage of the influence that we have to say, hey, you know what? This is my life and I'm able to live it the way I want to do it. It's not your life. Christ gave you that life, and what he does is he asks you to actually kill the flesh daily. So basically, you need to not live for yourself and live for me every single step of the way.
Oh yeah.
And so at the end of the day, that's what I need to do. I need to actually like kill my flesh and obey him daily. So going back to that whole story of transcending of the whole generations and stuff like that, man, like, what we do in our home, it affects our kids within their relationships at school, within their relationships with someone of the opposite sex, within their relationship with their parents, within their relationship with God. It affects everything. And sometimes I feel like, again, us as parents, we just think that, oh, well, we're the main authority in this house. We pay the bills. Can nobody tell me how to set the rules over here in my house? You know what I mean? And it's like, man, if we can just understand that God calls us to a higher standard, my first ministry has to be my home.
I would never worry about the capital C church unless the lowercase c church is fixed first. If I can't preach to my family, I can never preach on the pulpit, because the level of impact is nothing if I can't impact the home that I'm in. Too many people focus on the outer except the inner. Too many people focus on how many people can I impact, not who am I impacting. I will always, like, people see, okay, I create a lot of content, obviously what we're doing here with the podcast, creative culture. So they're like, oh, Nehemiah, but what were you talking about? Like, you create nothing but content. Correct, I do. But you can ask my wife those conversations that we have. Ask my daughter that's only 4 going on 5. I'd rather impact them first before I impact anyone else. If I can never look in the mirror and be satisfied or be okay with who I am in the mirror, if my wife looks at me and she's like, this ain't even a real man on this camera, then what am I doing? If you go into my house and it is turned upside down, physically, emotionally, spiritually, then what I do in a building will never leave any impact.
So true. I mean, I love the way Tony Evans.
I love Tony Evans.
Bro, I love the way Tony Evans says it. And Tony Evans literally says, it's far easier to shape a child than to repair an adult. It's far easier to shape a child than to repair an adult. And it's so true, because what we try to do is we try to correct our wrongs once we see our kids have already been governed by the culture that they live in.
Man, so many people focus on that. Is they focus on the bag and they forget that while you're creating a bag, you're creating baggage on your children. And sometimes a bag ain't worth the baggage that my future children will carry. I would never choose a job over the priority of being a parent. And until people don't realize that, they're always going to fall in that. They're gonna end up trying to repair an adult when they could have built a child.
They could have shaped the child. That's it.
It's all about motive. What do nurses do when the baby comes out? They'll shape their head.
Hey, he's the potter, man.
So,
we're the clay.
So I'm just saying, man, like,
he's the potter, we're the clay.
Starts in the home. You had an example of a restoration in your home.
Come on.
With your parents.
Yep.
So even when you stepped out, you had a representation at home that, well, if God did it for them,
That's it.
I've already done it 3 times. It's not working.
That's it.
Well, hold up. All right, Mom, Dad, listen. And what happens is he restored because there was already an example of a restoration, God in there anyways.
That's it.
You can make God has so many names. Go search his names and you'll see why the restoration happens, the healing happens, the provision happens, the faith that you have happens. It's just it's so many. Jehovah. I mean, dude, he has endless amounts of name.
Yeah, that's so good. And so he's been my provider for sure, man. The other second opportunity that I had was going back into the schools. I had left the schools to go into ministry, thinking that I was doing something for God in the church. You go right back. In the church. And then God was like, no, like, I deposited a talent in you to be able to talk to these young people. Your mission field is the schools. Like, I need you to go back into the schools. But this time, they don't need no coping mechanisms. What they need is me. Represent me. Introduce me to them. So that way they can go ahead and receive me and know exactly who I am through you.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy that you started it. Man, listen.
Come on, man. We having fun out here, bro.
This mic and throw it across his room. Actually, might have to catch the mic. It's just crazy. Like, I don't even know how to explain what he's doing, and it's okay because sometimes a season of silence. Someone told me recently, and this is right before Nemo, just be quiet about things. I took that to heart. The moment I did that, God started to move even more. Because sometimes you tell people your heart and they don't have the same heart as you. So they pray against it. They try to curse it. And the moment that you move in silence, only you and God and your spouse knows. Yeah. And if your spouse is on one accord, ain't no cursing.
Yeah.
So I just believe, man, like, it's just crazy, man. Like, God gave you a second chance with your whole life, really, literally your whole life, and then God gave me even a second chance, or really a third chance, at like, now you're gonna go to the Bay, and you're gonna do what I've called you to do.
That's it,
1,000%, and ain't nobody gonna stop you. The only person that's in the way is the guy you look in the mirror every day. So kill that man.
Come on, man,
dude, I'm excited for this episode to release. I believe creative culture has a different meaning now. It's not about becoming the biggest of nothing. What's the point of being the biggest with no impact? I believe that this is a safe space where creatives, you don't have to create content to be creative. I believe what you're doing is very creative because not everyone has the creativity to speak to children, to these students that like you are. And even God he's even giving you more territory this year. Hey, all right, you're going to keep doing high schools, but now, young adults, now I'm going to get you into these college students, these kids that are making life decisions, So, man, dude, I want to say thank you, man. Thank you so much for coming on. And this is such a good one. I got some more topics that I want to bring you on again and get your perspective on, because what you're doing for the children, for the community, it's amazing, and you've been doing it in silence, and God is, whether you want to like it or not, but God's starting to expose it in a good way, because people need to start not hopping on the trend, but they need to start revealing that you don't need to have someone go into your church to impact them. You need to go because you are the church. If they don't want to step into a building, I'm going to step into your building and I'm going to go in there and impact. And I love, and please, please, people, stop saying that God is not in the schools, because you are showing us, our boy Sean and some others are literally showing that God is still in their schools. Come on. While the government wants to take him out, there is principles that are saying, no, let's leave him in. and what you're doing, and with others that you know, others that we know that are doing the same exact thing.
Yes.
God is doing that. FCA, YFC, what they're doing is saying, you think you can take the students. We're going to show you why you don't play with our students.
Yes.
So, man, thank you so much for coming on. This is a good one. We can keep going, but
Nemo,
but
we can be going
because it's
and at
we feed off of each other.
Yeah, and what I want you to understand is that you're a leader no matter what position you have. You don't even need a position to be a leader. Leader is influence, and you've influenced a lot of people to actually create content, right? Within, Fresno County, everything like that. And so I'm just blessed to be your friend, man. Like I'm honored to be here in creative culture. It was a long time coming, but God is never late.
He knew what he was doing.
Yeah, God is never late.
He was moving some chess pieces.
That's
around.
it. That's it.
So,
and so I'm just grateful, man. Grateful for the community that God has given me. I kind of keep my friends pretty close to me, because I want people to add to the kingdom instead of subtracting from the kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if you're all about the kingdom, like let's go ahead and rub shoulders.
Hey, adding leads to multiplication, which leads to way more people coming to Christ.
Come on, man.
So,
hey, we're about to start doing some mathematics, and I
Sorry,
was bad. I was bad
Sorry,
in math. So we gonna go ahead and shut this one down.
No, man, but thank you so much for even opening up your home to have us
Yes.
and my wife and I come in and be able to shoot this podcast, man. It was a great one.
Yes.
I believe a lot of the right people are about to watch this and be changed.
Praise God.
I want people to know that there's a second chance in life.
That's it.
There's a second chance in life. And if you create the culture in your home, then that means that whatever happens in the future, they're going to look at the culture that was created at home. And that culture that was created at home can impact the future.
Hey, it starts to become natural. And I hate to always be quoting scripture and everything like that, but out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Mm-hmm. So whatever's stirring in your heart, you're actually gonna vomit from your mouth, right? And so it's like if it's actually something that's happening and it's reoccurring in your home, it's going to eventually overflow into your ministry. It's going to overflow into your friendships. It's going to overflow into many people that you surround yourself with, throughout life, your day, everything like that.
Life,
so
everything, man. So yeah, man, thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of Creative Culture. Hope you guys like this one. Make sure you comment down below. Tell us what you like so much about this conversation. There's so much that we can talk about, but JJ, thank you for coming on, and this is another episode here at Creative Culture, where we believe that creatives like you and I can change the culture today. See y'all later.